How's the volume here? Let's move this up. So good morning and welcome to iCUBED, Innovation, Invention, and Integration. So my name is David Cameron. I'm the Executive Director of Yell Canada, which is a registered charity that supports the development of entrepreneurial thinking in young minds. So I'm going to be your MC today, which means you might get annoyed with my face and voice by the end of the day, but I am going to make sure we stay on time and get through the day, and so that you can get out of here in a reasonable hour. And it will be my honor and pleasure to introduce everyone to you today. So before we get started, I want to briefly call attention to this. So I believe everyone had one, got one when they walked in, but this gives you an outline for what's going to happen today, okay? So right from the get-go, as soon as we kind of get through some introductions and talk about this conference and this event, you're going to have a key presentation, an address from an alumni of Yale, and I'll introduce him very shortly. So first and foremost, washrooms. Out this hall, to the right, okay? And you are free to go and do as need be. Secondly, as well, phones. So everyone, including myself, if you can please pull out your phone and turn it to silent. Done. No phones for anyone gets their phone ringing, you just stand up and answer it. I might answer for you. That'll be fun. Okay, so before we go any further, I want to do to quickly welcome Manu Manhawk to the stage. So Manu is the Assistant Superintendent with School District 91 and has been with the district for 25, 30 years, and both him and his wife have been very invested, involved in this community, multiple communities around Vanderhoof, Prince George, etc. So thank you very much, and I will let him do our formal introduction and welcome to today.
Okay, good morning. So I am a principal, and when I stand up at assembly and say good morning, it's just one of so good morning. Just one of those expectations that I have. So again, like David said, welcome to iCUBED. This is our first ever as a school district hosting something called the Technology and Entrepreneurship Summit. We hope it's not our last, but we're excited to be hosting it today. So before I begin, let me recognize that we're privileged to work and play on the territory of the iCUBED First Nation. So that's something that's important for us to recognize. So I want to first of all welcome and thank all of our guests that are here today. You're going to meet them throughout the day. Many of them have traveled this morning from across northern British Columbia to join us, and some of them flew in yesterday from Prince George on flights that they missed, but they got here. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us today in beautiful Nechako Lakes and at Nechako Valley Secondary School. So we have a great day planned today. I've had the pleasure of meeting some of these folks. So you're going to get a keynote this morning from a young man named Georgie Secretary-Yuk. So Georgie's a young man who graduated from Coquitlam High School. He took the Yell program and then is pursuing studies at SFU, while also taking care of his company called Caring Technology, Inc. Searing Technology. Thanks, Georgie. So Georgie is our first speaker today. So Georgie, thank you for taking the time to join us here today in northern British Columbia. You're also going to get a chance to be involved in an entrepreneurship panel today. And you're going to be able to talk with 3 separate entrepreneurs. So I've met Sean this morning, and I haven't met Terry, and I'm looking forward to meeting her personally, but I have met Paul. Is Paul here? Paul's up front, and I had the pleasure of meeting Paul at SFU last summer. Paul and I share some historical experiences. We both grew up in Prince George. We both delivered newspapers together at the Prince George Citizen. Paul was far more successful at that than I was. Paul and I both sold vacuum cleaners. Well, Paul actually sold vacuum cleaners. I tried to sell vacuum cleaners. So today, I want one of our students to ask Paul during the panel, what does selling vacuum cleaners have to do with an entrepreneurial skill set? So can somebody make sure they ask Paul that? He'll speak to that. I don't think Paul's going to try and sell you any vacuum cleaners today. So Paul, thank you for joining us today, also in Vanderhoof. Pleasure to have you. We've also invited 12 plus folks to set up booths that will be in our library. And you're going to get a chance to go to those booths and mingle with those presenters. Take the time to ask questions. Ask them about their passions and the work that they do. Make this day worthwhile for you. So I want to thank all those presenters for joining us today as well. By the end of the day, I can predict that this room is going to be buzzing with some creative energy. You don't look like you're quite buzzing yet, but I think by the end of the day, this room is going to be buzzing with some creative energy, and David's going to take us through an ideation exercise, so I'm looking forward to that as well. So does that sound like a great day? Yeah. Let me remind you, I'm a principal, and so some of these questions, I need some, so doesn't that sound like a great day? Yeah. Or would you rather be back at your high school for Collaborative Wednesday? No. Okay, that's what I thought. So today promises to be a great day. Let me do a couple of thank yous very quick. These kinds of days don't happen without the hard work of a few people. So Darren and Sagar, can you both give a wave? So these two gentlemen have worked very hard to coordinate this day. So let's give them a round of applause for this day then. So thank you both for doing this today. I also want to thank our partner in this is the Innovation Central Society and their executive director, Matt Hutchin. So you'll see on our posters that it says iCUBED powered by ICS. This wouldn't happen without our partnership with Matt and his board and the society. So Matt, thank you very much for making this happen. So you've already met David Cameron, and I'm actually a little unclear as to how they convinced him to MC for the day. So he's our guest, and we fly him up, but he also has to work the mic all day. So David, thank you for that. David is the executive director, say this with me, the Youth Entrepreneurship Leadership Launchpad, otherwise known as YEL. Youth Leadership Entrepreneur, no, sorry, let me do it again. Youth Entrepreneurship Leadership Launchpad, YEL. One of the things I want our students to know is that School District 91 is the first northern school district to partner with YEL, and in September 2018, we're going to be offering an Entrepreneurship 12 course that is going to be done through YEL. So David, thank you very much for that partnership. You can give David a round of applause for that. So one more local thank you, and I want to thank Camden. So Camden's at the front with a computer. You have to know at the board office that when this event was coming together, they wanted to live stream this. So this is kind of like a joke. You know, 10 adults get together and like, how are we going to live stream? And they're thinking like, no, we got to spend a few $1,000s. We got to buy some equipment. And then all of a sudden, Camden steps into the picture. And he said, I've got it. And so Camden has been able to broadcast this through his own YouTube channel. So can you give a round of applause to Camden? Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to iCUBED. And David, I'm going to give the mic back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Manu. So we are live streaming this event. For those who are joining us on the live stream, I want you to know that you can ask questions. I believe it's written there as well, but just as a heads up, iCubedquestions@gmail.com. You send your questions in there, and during our panel, after, if we've got time with Georgie to take questions, we will pull some questions from there as well. So, today, and the purpose of today. Who here had heard about the word entrepreneurship before coming here and before hearing about this event? Who here hadn't? I had no clue what entrepreneurship was in high school. Who here has taken a business-related course or program or club? Okay, okay. Who here, when they hear the word entrepreneurship, gets really excited? Me. Who has no clue what it entails and wants to learn more? Okay, that's exciting. I love that. So I had no idea what entrepreneurship was in high school. I thought it had to do with running a business, which I thought meant running a corner store or my school store. And that has definitely changed. My perspective on that has changed a lot over the last couple of years, and my work and my studies. So today's conference is exploring innovation technology in entrepreneurship. So what is entrepreneurial thinking? What is that skill set? And how does it apply to people who might not want to start a company, and why is it valuable? So we're going to explore that. We're going to explore the technology sector, and we're going to explore a little bit about what being an entrepreneur might entail. So before going any further, I'm going to invite up to the stage Matt. Now, Matt Hutchin has spent over 20 years in business in various sectors, and over the 18 years had built up a financial and bookkeeping company, and moved to Prince George in 2014. Okay. Executive director previously of the Chamber of Commerce in Kingston, currently now the executive director at Innovation Central Society, which is kind of like an incubator and co-working space, and that meant nothing to me in high school. It's essentially a gathering place for entrepreneurs to work, and that means they're able to share thoughts and ideas and resources. So essentially, Matt works with lots of entrepreneurs in the region, and I'm very excited to be able to invite him up to stage to talk a little bit more about technology. What is it? What does it mean? Because it means more than software.
Thanks, David. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Matt Hutchin, and I'm the Executive Director of the Innovation Central Society, which is based in Prince George, but which serves all of northern BC. And we work with innovators, inventors, entrepreneurs, and other folks who have an interest in pursuing or exploring or creating new things. And we provide supports to those folks, such as one-on-one coaching with experienced business people and entrepreneurs who've been there and done that before. We provide them with connection to resources that can assist them with the technical part of their project, whether that's one of the colleges or universities that can help build a prototype, or whether it's other expertise in the community to help them technically advance the project or idea that they're working on. And we can connect them and make introductions to potential funders and investors and other folks that are going to be an important part in launching and growing their business. And in addition to all that work that we do with the individual innovators, we also work to raise the general awareness about the importance and opportunity around technology and innovation in this region. So before we get started with the main part of today's program, I just wanted to spend a couple minutes to kind of give you a bit of background information, a bit of more understanding and definition around what we see as technology and innovation in the region, and some of the cool stuff that we already are witnessing happening in this part of the province. So as you may know from the, looking at the professions and businesses and careers of maybe your parents or friends or neighbors, the economy of this region has largely being based around land-based and primary resource-based activity, forestry, mining, agriculture, and those sorts of activities. But what we're seeing now is a really exciting shift in the economy of the region. New opportunities are opening up related to technology and innovation, which are not only making those traditional industries more efficient or more safer, more profitable and sustainable, but also creating new opportunities for people in this region to do work or build businesses right here that serve a number of other fields. For many people, the idea of technology or innovation seems like things that are out of reach to them. It's stuff that other people in other places do, and it's not necessarily anything that people think is accessible to them. A lot of people think that technology means only robots or writing computer code or those sorts of things, and that innovation can only mean creating something brand new to the world that fundamentally changes the way something is done. But while technology does indeed include things like robots and computer code, it also includes a wide variety of digital, electronic, mechanical, medical, agricultural, social, and other types of advancements. And while innovation can sometimes indeed be transformative in things that are brand new to the world, more often than not, innovation is simply an incremental step forward, a small gain made, a small improvement in how something is done to make it more efficient or safer, more profitable, or more environmentally friendly. So when at first the notions of tech and innovation can seem a little bit intimidating, they don't need to be. They are in fact accessible to people everywhere, and it's our hope that through today and through other events similar to this that we'll do in the future, that we can convince you that it's a career or entrepreneurial opportunity that is accessible to you and can provide great opportunity. Now, technology is already a pretty big deal in British Columbia. It employs more than 100,000 people, which is more than mining, forestry, and oil and gas combined, and generates $23 billion a year in revenues in the province. And while a lot of that tech activity right now is in downtown Vancouver and large employers like Microsoft and Electronic Arts and Hootsuite and some of those other software companies, the BC tech sector also consists of the companies that you'll be introduced to throughout the day today. Right here in northern BC, there are innovative companies who are producing, in some cases, world-leading products and innovations. Later today, you'll have the chance to meet companies and organizations who are developing and applying sensing technologies, electrical innovations, community economic development apps, data analytics, drones, and smart homes. You'll also get exposed to important new technologies like 3D printers and learn more about the growing industry of esports, all of which are happening right here in this region. Entrepreneurs in northern BC are choosing to build and grow technology companies from right here. And beyond the companies that are actually present here today, in the region we're seeing exciting innovations related to robotics, geospatial and mapping technologies, machine learning, biofuels, smart greenhouses, and a host of other products. And these innovations are coming from the college and the university, they're coming from large public companies like Canfor, but they're coming from small entrepreneurial companies, one-person operations, and people who are just tinkering and inventing stuff in their garage and in their basement. So I'm really jealous of all of you who are here today, because as students, your careers and entrepreneurial opportunities lie completely wide open ahead of you. And with the accessibility of tech and innovation, these are now achievable real opportunities for you to consider. And you don't necessarily have to move away from this region if that's not something that you want to do down the road. Your professional life will give you opportunities to be a part of such incredible new innovative ideas that we probably yet even can't imagine what those things are going to be. So I'm hopeful that today and the other events and programs that we will collaborate on with School District 91 and with others in the region, that inspires you to consider these opportunities. We want you to feel empowered to pursue them so that you can apply your talents and creativity in creating new technologies and new innovations in whatever area you are passionate about, whether it's business or a social cause, whether it's in resources, agriculture, health, finance, communications, or any other discipline that's important to you. And through the course of the day today, we want you to know who you can connect with to follow up and help you along the way, both inside the school district and outside the school district throughout the region as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. Innovation Central is thrilled with the chance to collaborate with the school district in having this event, and we hope it's the first of many like it in the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Matt. So at Yale, we have the opportunity to work with a lot of young people who come up with business ideas. And people often ask me if we only focus on technology, and I say, no, we don't. There's no such requirement. But I think in this case, we almost feel like we're preaching to the choir. I don't think any of our students can imagine a future without technology. And so you see it integrated in everyone's ideas. And Georgie is no exception to that. So Georgie Secretariat, Secretariat is how I usually say it. Yeah, better? No. Is an alumnus of Yale from Coquitlam, BC. He is in his second year at Simon Fraser University in Computer Sciences and Mathematics. Georgie is the director of Searing Technologies, Inc., which is essentially smart jewelry, which means jewelry incorporating some form of technology that empowers and keeps women safe in particular. So I'll let him tell a little bit more about that and what that entails. With no further ado, I want to invite Georgie up to share a little bit more about his story.
Thank you, David. So, a little bit about me. I went through the Yale program, and when I was going through the Yale program, we came up with the idea that is known as Searing. So, in a sense, Searing is a smart jewelry emergency alert platform. So, we create smart jewelry, and if you're a woman walking down the street and you feel in danger, you can tap the jewelry 3 times, and through an app on your phone, we will send you a GPS location and an emergency call for help to the local authorities and your emergency contacts. So that started out back in 2016, and we're still working on it. And fingers crossed, we're in our last little bit where we're finishing up jewelry designs, and hopefully soon you guys will be able to see the final product. So that is very exciting for me personally because I've been involved in it for so long, and it's kind of seeing it grow from the very beginning. And in essence, to what Manu said, searing is caring. So we do care for the people. So let's backtrack a little bit. Who here likes playing with Legos, or as a kid played with Legos? Ooh, almost everybody. Lovely. As a kid, I had a lot of Legos, like a ton of Legos. I lived here, and I came from Ukraine, so as a child, I would live for 3 months here, travel through Europe, and then live in Ukraine for another 3 months. So obviously, I had my parents buy me 2 Lego sets. I had a full Lego set here, which was like 3 huge cabinets of purely Legos, and then I had a huge cabinet of Legos out in Ukraine. I had enough Legos to last me a lifetime, whatnot, whatever. But I also have a brother, right? So you got to share, unfortunately. And so, what we would often do as kids is we would sit down, and with the Lego sets that we had, I mean, we always wanted more, but with what we had, we built the craziest things we imagined. Like, we thought we were having, like, galactic fights, spaceships, or, there's the, whatever you wanted. We let our imagination roam, and we used the resources at hand to build something that we wanted, something that we were dreaming about, something we were imagining, something that was very out there, but we brought it down and became a part of us and our little child come to life through Legos. And a lot of my friends and I also love Legos, and I love tinkering with a lot of things, as many of you here do. So I've always enjoyed personally coming up with something out of the blue and just trying new things and experimenting with everything. So I was an okay student in like middle school, and then moving on to high school, I decided that, well, I am getting kind of bored, but at the same time, I'm not really a good student, and I only got a C in French. And so I came up to a teacher one day, and I was like, "So, Miss Shaw, my high school is going to be offering 4 languages. What if I take them all?" And my teacher looked at me, and she was like, "That's a joke, right? You're not going to take all the languages high school has to offer. You just got a C in French 8." I was kind of stubborn too, and I still am. And I never listened to her, so I ended up taking the high school, all the languages that my high school had to offer, which was French, Spanish, Mandarin, Japanese. And in that part, I tried something that was a bit out of my comfort zone. I tried learning completely foreign languages and grammatical structures completely foreign to me. I speak Russian, English, Ukrainian, right? So growing up, it was always, English or Russian. Russian alphabet is like completely weird. We're not even going to get into that. And then I was like, okay, let's try to get into Chinese. This sounds like a really good idea. I really want to learn how to write all of that. How do you actually write those characters? And then I realized that if you actually sit down through hard work and hours of repeating the same characters, how you actually memorize. So that was an interesting journey in the beginning of my high school career. But by about 3rd year in grade 11, I got bored. Yeah, I was taking languages. Sure, I love languages, and I still do, but I wanted to do something different. So I had a group of friends, and we're still friends to this day. And so we decided that we wanted to participate in the Google Science Fair. So as you know, it's one of the biggest science fair competitions out there in the world, and it's held every year. But we didn't know what we wanted to do. We were just kind of sat down and we're like, okay, well, we're going to participate, but we don't know what we want to build. Now, before I continue, we did not participate. Nothing worked out with that, but we learned a lot of lessons. But the first idea we came up with was we wanted to bring energy to isolated areas in Africa. So back then, which was about 4 years ago, the cost of solar panels was significantly higher than it is today. And we were thinking about how do we minimize the cost and at the same time, provide the energy to the people living without proper infrastructure. And so we came up with an idea back then that we didn't end up building, but we went through and we thought about, did all the math, and we thought, okay, how could this actually work? And the idea was that we would have a small, like a glass or a plastic dome, and on the bottom of the dome, we would have a smaller solar panel. So instead of having like a square meter solar panel, you would have a 10 centimeter square solar panel, and we would redirect the light, kind of like concentrate it. And then we would have battery packs attached. So that was our first foray into like dreaming of an idea that we didn't end up pursuing. So then came the next step. We decided, okay, we still want to build something, and we still want to do a project of some sort, but we were all really into science and chemistry. And back then, we were like deciding, why don't we take on the biggest and the hardest thing possible, nanotechnology. We were back in high school, and we had big dreams, and we still do. And we wanted to work with a material called graphene. So we created this huge, huge plan on how we're going to create this box, put in deadly poisonous gas, heat it up to about 1200 degrees Celsius, pressurize it, and then produce this material. So we ended up getting a meeting with a professor at a university where we outlined our plan, and on a square piece of paper, 9 by 11, we had a box drawn, which is where we were going to, put all of the toxic gases in the university environment. And he looked at us and he was like, this is a great idea, guys, but we're not approving this under any condition. It's too dangerous. So that didn't end up going anywhere either. And we still loved science, technology, math. In grade 12 year, we decided that we'd try our hand at Yale. So at the same time as we were taking at Yale, we were also taking a lot of physics and chemistry classes. And my friend, he would just actually sleep through those classes. What he would do in like physics class and chemistry class, he would sit beside me. He was learning programming languages, just different programming languages, because he just wanted to program and tinker and make his own like chess games instead of actually learn whatever was up on the board. And he just kind of slept through class, and he did well. He was a good student. He was very smart. And then I had another friend, Felix, who also tinkered in class, and actually it's pretty funny that he created his own programming language, and he decided to name it after his girlfriend. Now, his girlfriend didn't really like the idea, but he found it a lot more appealing. And we ended up going into Yale, and we didn't really know what to expect. For us, it was just, we came to a meeting, and we were told about this thing, entrepreneurship, and we didn't really know what to expect. Like, much like most of you guys here right now, to me, it was a foreign concept. I knew of business. My father did some business, and I thought of the idea, but I wanted to go into physics. I wanted to be a physicist. I wanted to study, do research, and just help contribute in that way to the world. And working long hours as a physicist was nice and all, but I also liked other fields. At one point, I wanted to be a writer or a marine biologist. There was a lot of different fields that I wanted to go into. And so I decided, why don't I try Yale? So at the same time as I was taking Yale, I was actually also working a lot. So I was taking 4 or 5 courses, and I was working 30, 35 hours a week. But I was trying to graduate early from high school, because my goal was, okay, I'm going to get out of high school earlier and just go pursue what I love doing, which is, I wasn't sure back then, I was really lost. And so in Yale started off with us learning a lot about entrepreneurship, marketing, public speaking, presenting, business models, and a lot of other various things. As well, we tackled a lot of issues. A lot of the assignments we did, a lot of exercises were about solving issues and coming up with ideas, no matter how crazy they are. Our teacher would always, we would have an activity where in classes we would come up with crazy solutions to problems. It didn't matter how crazy it was, be it, you're going to have a robot that's going to do this thing for you that you actually can't build the robot, or if you had contact lenses that actually displays some sort of information on those contact lenses, there was no limit to how creative we could get. And so for the first half of the semester, we kind of just enjoyed learning about entrepreneurship, and we realized that there isn't really a specific definition for us personally. In the second half of the course, the way it was structured is that we split off into teams, and in teams we work on an idea under the mentorship of a local entrepreneur. So when team splitting time came, our teacher comes into the class, and he was a wonderful guy, and he says, well, I'm gonna go grab a coffee. In 5 minutes, when I'm back, you guys better be in teams. So everybody was lost, and we knew some people in the class, some people had friends, but we didn't know how to arrange the groups ourselves. We were really lost. This was our first time that a teacher didn't actually let us, they didn't choose the groups for us, they let us choose our own groups. That was a foreign concept in our high school. And so he came back, and we still weren't in groups. And he was telling us how, okay, you guys aren't in groups, so I'm gonna go leave again, this time go to the bathroom. And when I'm back, this time I'm serious, you guys better be in groups. So what everybody did was, we're all lost, but everybody kind of chose the friends they knew or some of the connections they made in class, and they formed teams with their friends. So, unfortunately, there were either some of the friends that I knew went with other friends, or I don't really know some other people because they were from different high schools. I ended up not having a team. And funnily enough, there were 3 other girls who also didn't end up having a team. So we were like this kind of band of misfits. And we ended up forming our own team, right? We kind of had no other choice. Nobody kind of wanted us. All teams were full already, and we worked with what we had. And so then brainstorming came, and we were thinking, okay, well, how are we going to change the world? What are we going to do that we think is going to be wonderful, and how can we help people? We went through probably about, one assignment we did is we had to come back with, each person had to have about 5 to 10 ideas. So among 4 of us, we came up with about 20 to 40 ideas that we could actually all tear apart and see what we liked. None of those ideas worked. We didn't really like any of them. And then accidentally, one day, the idea of searing came up. And as soon as it came up, everybody had a spark. Everybody knew that this is what we wanted to do. This is what we really liked. And so we started pursuing the project. And for us, it was a really interesting experience because it wasn't just a typical high school project. There isn't any guidelines. There isn't an expected outcome. You decide where you want to end up. You know you'll be competing in a competition at the end of the course, but that's about it. How do you get to creating a PowerPoint that's going to tell you why you're going to make a lot of money and be the best company in the world? What do you do to show proof to people and tell them, yeah, we believe in our idea and we think it's a good idea? So our mentor did multiple exercises with us, and I remember we were serving people. We were walking around the mall, and we're just asking people general questions about themselves, like what is your gender, what is your age, do you wear jewelry? And we did that for about 2 to 3 weeks. And then we came back and we met with our mentor, and he looked at us and he was like, is that all you guys did? And we were like, yeah, we think this is good enough, right? And then he was like, no, you guys have to ask people for money. You guys need to ask people for money. People aren't willing to go and give you money. Your idea is not worth anything. So that was a bit interesting for us because we didn't feel comfortable asking for money. If I come up to somebody on the street, a high school student, and I say, hey, I have this idea, do you want to give me $5? It's going to look really weird. They're going to think I'm crazy. So what we did is we actually printed out shirts with our logos, and we did end up, well, eventually using his advice, and we went to the mall, we had people fill out the surveys, and at the end we asked people for $5. And that was hands down one of the hardest things I had ever done, because I had nothing to show to people other than, hey, this is just something up there, proof of concept that we hope will come to life one day. But strangely enough, people ended up giving us money. So, and that was when we realized that our idea had some merit. And we ended up raising, I think, only about $50. But even then, those $50 seemed like a mountain to us because people gave us money. People gave us money. This was the biggest thing that we had to take away from it, is that some people believe that this is a good idea. Now, maybe some people did it out of jokes, or they were like, okay, these kids are trying so hard. They got shirts and they're in high school. Maybe they're just begging for money or donations or something, whatever. But we still got money. And so we ended up working really, really hard on everything that we wanted to do, everything we wanted to accomplish. And we thought we were doing a great job. We thought that, okay, we're going to make this amazing presentation. It's going to be great. We're going to cover everything, and we're going to have the best presentation in all of the class. So about a week before the final competition, where we were supposed to stand up in front of all of our classmates, judges, and all of the other schools and talk about what we created, we held a demo session within our classroom. And that demo session, we had some judges who sat there, and they asked us sample questions. And the PowerPoint presentation that we made, it got torn down to shreds. We worked a solid month on it at that point, and we were really satisfied with what we built. We liked the design. We did it all through Adobe Photoshop, and we put in a month of work for a PowerPoint presentation that was torn to shreds, and people said that it was bad because of certain reasons that are valid reasons. So we were lost. We had a week and a half, so what are we going to do? The next class is held in a week, so obviously we have to come up with a new PowerPoint presentation. So back then we were working around the clock, or at least we thought so, and a week from then, the next Tuesday, which is about, 4 days till the competition, we came up with a new PowerPoint presentation. And it got torn down again. It wasn't good enough. So, 4 days until the final presentation in front of all the judges, and we are now nervous because we actually don't have a PowerPoint. So we start working on a new one. And by Friday morning, we wrap one up. It's our third iteration. We upload it to the Google Drive, which our mentor has access to. And we send him an email. Hey, Jason, could you please take a look at our PowerPoint and our script and see if you like it or not? So Jason, he ends up going into our Google Drive. He was unsatisfied with our PowerPoint and our script. He deleted it, and he erased our script, and he replaced it with a Word document that said, "Scripts are evil, do it by heart." So we worked for the whole night, and at 7:59 a.m., a minute before the beginning of the Yale conference, we finished our new PowerPoint. So we didn't actually have a script when we presented, and we were very nervous, very, very nervous, because we didn't know what's going to happen. Like, everybody else was so prepared. They had scripts. They had PowerPoints that they were done like days in advance, and we were still behind. We just finished it. And one team even had a physical prototype. We 3D printed some things, and we just painted them, and we hoped people would notice it and be like, oh, this is amazing, but that was our biggest play. And so we stood up in front of our first presentation in front of a group of judges, and we did it. We kind of went through it, and we spoke. And as our mentor said, we did it by heart. And from what we knew, because we built the project from scratch, so we knew everything there was to know about it because we researched it. So there was no reason for us to actually use a script in the first place. We knew the subject matter because we created the company, or the idea. And so we ended up actually getting into the finals. And when it was announced, it was, I believe, around 11 a.m., we sat down with our mentor again, and we had 3 hours to go until the final presentation. So our mentor, he sat down with us, and he was telling us how our PowerPoint is still not good enough. We were not satisfied either, because we were also kind of stressed. We just worked on so many iterations of our presentation, and now it's still not good enough. Okay, fine. We sit down with our mentor, we do what he tells us to do, and we go through and we adjust the PowerPoint for 3 hours or so, right up to the final competition. So we end up presenting, and all the other teams presented, and they looked great. And we were honestly very stressed. We were like, are we going to win? Every other idea out there is just as good as we are. Now, going into the competition, we decided that we will pursue our idea whether we actually win or don't win. So in our minds, yes, we were stressed because we did want to win. Everybody wants to win in something, right? But we knew that we would continue with the idea because we liked the idea. And so we weren't really tied up to the idea that winning means everything. It does mean a lot, but it's not the be-all, end-all. But we did end up winning. And that was in 2016, Yale Venture Challenge. And we ended up continuing with the idea. And we've built up a team. And first we onboarded too many people. And then we had to let some people go, and we had some team changes, some issues with software development and manufacturing and design, and some things that it's hard to imagine until you actually get down to it and do it yourself. It seems so simple, but yet there's so many small components, and it's so complex. It's a whole beast of its own. And hopefully we'll be launching very soon, as we have entered our final phase. We fixed some of our manufacturing issues, and we're working on the final design iteration for our jewelry. And soon enough, you guys will be able to order it online. Awesome. Any questions?
Give us the proper pronunciation of your last name, please.
Secretariuk.
One more time.
Secretariuk. Yep. 19. I'm 19, yeah. I'm not that much older than most of you guys. My brother's 16, so. Yeah. Yeah, he also went through Yale.
So you're from your original team.
Yeah.
How many of your original team members are still with you?
That's a good question. I'm the only original member. So teams, every single team ended up changing because circumstances changed around the team members involved, and our team also changed. For example, the week after the Venture Challenge, one of our team members, she accepted her University of Toronto application, so she was going off to University of Toronto. So she was going to be away from the project, and January this year, 2 other students decided to focus on school from the original team, and that's what happened. And teams change all the time. For example, there's a lot of times that teams just don't work together because they choose their friends. And when you're working with a lot of friends on a project that there isn't a really specific guideline, that you don't know what to do, it's really hard to hold somebody else accountable who's your friend. If your friend says, "Hey, can I give you this tomorrow because I'm going to go to a movie theater tonight," you'll say, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And then you end up stalling behind, and you're not going to complete something, or the work's not going to be up to par because you are friends, and it's okay. Cool. Sure.
Well, let me just come on down and say what I mentioned this morning. It's not a queue in terms of the caliber of conversation. And then we're going to take you through these guys.
Paul?
Yeah, well, so that was all great. So to help everyone here, what I was going to say is it sounded to me like you're talking a lot about overcoming adversity and problem solving.
Yeah,
So I guess the
creativity.
question I would ask is, what was the biggest thing that you learned out of the whole process?
Mm. Out of Yell specifically, or just the entire process? Ooh, there's so many things that I've learned. I could probably make a huge list, but first of all, it's really hard working with teams and working with individuals in teams. You have to find that individual approach to each person. So that's, I think, the hardest part is, I mean, also time scheduling. The fact that all of us were in school while we did this, or had part-time work. Finding time to actually meet up and work on something was really, really, really hard for us personally. A lot of times it was the fact that we simply lacked a lot of skills, and we learned that, well, we're actually not good enough to do something, so we have to find another way to do it. I'm still in my second year, so there's a lot that I don't know. But I'm willing to learn it, and I'm willing to find other ways that I could do stuff that needs to be done. So there's so much. There's so much. I think you can learn forever. Just sit there and just keep on working. You'll learn something new in any industry that you go into, because you'll think you'll know enough, and then somebody will come by and say, well, have you thought about that? And then you'll be like, oh no, I haven't. And then it's a can of worms that's been opened, and you have to think about that, and you'll learn lessons. Yeah. Let's go with the student. So I speak Russian, English, Ukrainian fluently, conversational Spanish and French, and my Mandarin is like beginner. I could like order food or some stuff like that, say hi. Yeah, that happens. It's actually a topic that not many people talk about, but oddly enough, it actually happened this summer, and it was a little short-term period where a lot of things that happened, not so good things, issues that popped up at the same time, and it really made me question whether what I'm doing, whether I'm on the right track, and whether I should stop or not. And it lasted over a month, and it was a bit of a loss of a drive, and then I decided that I wasn't actually going to pursue it. So, but that does happen because I've been working on the project since Yale ended. It was in May 2016. So now we're almost in 2018, and I've only put money into the project personally, right? So I've been just working nonstop, and at some point I was going to school, and I was under a lot of stress. So there's a lot of different factors that led me to be a bit depressed, and also when some issues pop up, you think, okay, well, why are these problems popping up? And so then you have to really reassess and say, okay, do I really like what I'm doing? Am I going to keep pushing even though I could be doing other things, and not necessarily much rather, but I could be doing other things. So yeah, that does happen, but then if you actually like the idea, like what you do, you're going to keep doing it. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to change the stage up here a little bit, and I'm going to invite up our coming panelists.
I'm all alt rock. Company-wise, I got you. Yeah?
Good now. Hello? Yeah, okay. So before we start, I just want to quickly thank Georgie for sharing his story. I know sometimes talking about a loss of drive, depression, challenges, rejection can be difficult, and sharing it in front of an audience that you don't know. So thank you, Georgie. And Georgie's around today for the rest of the day. So if any of you have questions for him, particularly during lunch, the breaks, the exhibitors hall, I believe he'll be moving around, as well as the design challenge, feel free to ask him questions directly. There's no such thing as a bad question in any of this, so feel free. So we're going to change energy and transition a little bit into a panel. I've got three entrepreneurs here with me who come from various backgrounds, different diverse backgrounds. And we're going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, who they are, what that means to them, and we'll open it up to questions along the way. There is, so if you guys have your agenda, you'll notice there's a female name and there's no females here. So Cheryl was not able to join us, unfortunately. So we do have Sam, Sean. See, I should have looked down first. Sean Caldera. So I'll start with Sean then. So Sean is also one of our exhibitors here that you'll have a chance to meet later on. So Sean was born, raised in Richmond, and had always been fascinated with video games. Side note, I wish I had built more games than I had played in my young days. So he came to Prince George in 2012 and actually studied and worked on his biochem degree. Very different. In 2015 started a company called Volcanic Gaming, which is an esports startup. Esports, kind of get it, online sports.
Competitive video gaming.
Yeah, competitive video gaming. And has helped build the Esports Foundation of Northern BC. So I'll let him share more of his story at some point. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us, Sean. And beside me, immediately on my right here, we have Paul Broussard. So Paul grew up in Prince George, ran away to Abbotsford, and has come back. And I know you have... for the past 15 years has been involved in various different business ventures. Today runs a company called Volition, which works with startups on strategy, helps them get funded, and he also runs a lot of events. So I've been to a few of his events. I love being there. You get to hear from all kinds of startups talk about what their idea is and what they're working on. Very excited and honored to have Paul joining us today. And on our very right here, Terry. Welcome, Terry. So Terry was also born and raised in Prince George, and his business ventures started as early as 19, investing in real estate. And over the next few years, eventually started an organization called Lithium One, which at the age of 24, which is a group of various companies. And now he and his partners own and operate about 5 different organizations. And Terry focuses specifically on Ripple Communications, without the E, Ripple without the E. At Ripple, I believe you're an exhibitor here today as well, right? So you'll have a chance to chat with Terry later as you rotate through. And Ripple Communications is a platform to connect the home. And so I'm going to let Terry explain a bit more about that. So without further ado, this session I'm gonna ask a couple of questions of our panelists here today, but we're gonna open it up to questions from the audience as well. And I believe Sagar, inside joke, it's Sagar, not anything else. there's a mic up here in front, if you can turn on mic 3 and go around and do that so our live stream can hear the questions as well when we get to that point. But until then, I would love to start and give each of our panelists 3 minutes just to say a little bit more about who they are, more context on the company, anything, and maybe specifically, if there's a question, what does entrepreneurship mean to you?
So hello, can anyone hear me? So my name's Terry. I founded Lithium One when I was 24, but before that I was an entrepreneur. At the age of 19, I bought my first house. It was going to be a flip. I used a zero-down mortgage, used a student line of credit to renovate it, and I sold it for a profit, and that's what I got started. So currently we have 5 different organizations. They range from construction, manufacturing, and communications. And yeah, entrepreneurship for me has always been my passion. I wanted to be a businessman ever since I was a little kid. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And along the way, I've had many different ideas that have failed. I've had many more failures than successes. My wife and I were counting one day, and I've had 15 failed ventures, and 4 now, maybe hopefully 5 profitable ventures. And it's never been anything about money. Like I'm never been motivated by profit or value. But along the way, I've learned that profit is a measure of value. So you have to be generating profit and revenues to add value to your customers. If people are willing to pay for what you're selling, it means you're selling something worthwhile that's adding value to their lives. Currently, this year our company's will do revenues of $12 million, and that's something that I'm proud of and not scared to talk about or just embarrassed about, because that's saying we're adding value to our community and to people's lives. Like we started off by, 6 years ago now, it was $0 in revenue. So from 0 to 6 years later, $12 million, and our goals are much higher than that. And it's not monetarily tied to saying we want to be rich. It's, we want to have ideas, we want to impact people in different ways that we can, and turning our strengths into, or weaknesses into our strengths. The fact that I'm from Prince George, I'm not in Vancouver, I don't have millions of people willing to buy my product. So using my weaknesses and saying, okay, what can I do to exploit those perceived weaknesses of saying somebody from Prince George, from the north, who went to Prince George Secondary School and UNBC after that. That doesn't mean I can't still have ideas that can impact people on a large scale. So, I mean, if you want to be a billionaire, create a product that 1 billion people are willing to pay $1 for. So using with that mindset, it's your idea has to create value in people's lives, and if you can create values in people's lives, which we've tried to do through different ideas and schemes, and as a kid, I was always getting kicked out of school, or kicked out of my classroom because I talked too much, and because I had all these bright ideas. But then I realized that was my strength, the fact that I had a big mouth, as my teachers told me, and I had all these, maybe dumb ideas that they may have thought. Those dumb ideas have now, been somewhat relatively successful, and hopefully I can leverage that further and further in the future. So yeah, that's me.
Sorry, Terry, can you explain what a connected home is as well?
So currently my latest venture, so I was kind of disappointed. The companies that I had, like I said, I always wanted to be a businessman, and I wanted to test my abilities to the fullest. And the current limitations of the businesses that I was in construction and manufacturing, we could only impact our community. Like Prince George only has 80,000 people, so I can only, we can only build so many homes, and we manufacture stone products, so granites and marbles and quartzes. We can only sell in Prince George, and we're the largest fabricator of natural stone in northern British Columbia. So we can only have such an impact because we don't have millions of people ready to buy our products. So we bought a company a year ago called CP Communications, and the goal really was, okay, so how do I leverage my skills as an entrepreneur to the largest, this year total addressable market. So my total addressable market, the way to increase that, and was through technology. And I'm not good with computers. I don't know anything about technology. I mean, Sean's probably a genius compared to me, but it was how do I use my skills to leverage that. So we bought this company, CP Communications, and then it's using the skills of that company at the highest leverage rate. So that company that I bought, it did internet for remote companies, and it had other skills that I was like, so how do, and I listed ideas. What can I do with the skills of this company and impact the largest total addressable market? And one of the skills was my company had a high knowledge of the internet. We had technicians that, you know, were good at going to people's houses and were good at customer service. So how can I use those skills in the largest possible market? And one area where I noticed the big weakness was connected home. But currently, the market, if you want to be able to unlock your doors of your house from here, I can unlock my doors. I can change my thermostat. I can turn the lights on and off. I can set geofencing. So when I drive up to my house, when I'm 100 feet away, the porch light turns on, the door unlocks, my temperature adjusts to what I like it, and the fan goes on in my bedroom. It all happens from one button, or just from a geofencing, in noticing that my phone is close. So that for me was something that, you know, I think everybody would want to have in their home. And it's not a technology that we develop, we license it, but my core competencies as somebody who's good at speaking to people and good at connecting and getting people excited about stuff is I can take different things and put them together in an easy way that's fun and easy to understand. Because if you overcomplicate things, it never sells. So that's where the connected home, we feel that traditionally that was been an industry that you have your internet companies, you have your security companies, and then you have companies that come into your home and do homes audio systems and, you know, your lighting systems. So those were three separate industries that were not getting harmony with them. So my idea was, why don't I combine it all together? Like these internet companies, you know, they have sometimes they have data limits, they have contracts, they make it really hard to do different things other than just giving you the internet. The internet is like hydro to your house. Everybody has internet, but it's what are we doing to incorporate that internet, right? It's how can we leverage that? And I had all these ideas, you know, I had 10 different ideas, and as I filtered through them over the last year, I came up with the fact that everybody wants to be able to connect to their home. And then not everybody, but the biggest total market that I can find that I can leverage my skills to. So we got licensed by the CRTC to be a third-party internet wholesaler all across BC and Alberta. So that gave me access to 4 million customers. So now I can say my customers, I have 4 million people as my total addressable market. So I built the product that could get the most of those people, and I built a product specific. So my product is geared towards homeowners. So millennials between the ages of 25 and then the generation above all the way to 45. If you're young, you own a home, you don't need cable TV because I can't do cable TV. You don't need a landline. So you're interested in connectivity. So we can give you internet, home security, and home automation all for one price. For $64.99, we can connect your home and give you internet with no data limits, no contracts, and none of the above. So that was my idea for Ripple Home. I've been developing over the last year. We're doing a soft launch right now. We've been onboarding customers for the last month, and I hope to fully roll it out within the next 3 to 4 weeks after a testing phase. And having access to that 4 million customer base, my idea is how can I fully see the full extent of my entrepreneurial ability? So I to do that right away, to set the pace for my employees in my company, I licensed a company in Alberta. We hope to launch in our second city by this summer. And after that, I hope to be in every city in BC and Alberta. And I may or may not get there, but I'm going to try. So yeah, that's Ripple.
Thank you. So I pay way more than $64.99 just for internet, so we got to talk. So I pay more than $64.99 just for internet, so we got to talk. That said, though, so I heard a word in there, and I think it's going to come up. You said leverage. Do you mind explaining what that means to you?
Yeah, so leverage is how you can use one thing to have the greatest total amount of impact. So leveraging your skills. Like, so for me to leverage the fact that I'm a good communicator and I'm good at getting people to like me. If I have enough time with anybody, I think I can make anybody like me. And that was just for me being a chatty kid and asking questions and figuring out what interests people. So to leverage that, which as a kid was a weakness, got me kicked out of every classroom that I was in for talking too much and asking too many questions, I can leverage that as an entrepreneur to ask questions and say, what do people want? What do people need? So leveraging that weakness or that skill of mine to have the largest impact. So the largest impact that I can have is I can ask the questions and figure out how to impact the most amount of people with the answers that I get from those questions. So use that skill. So it's a lot of things on my way to my journey of an entrepreneur has found that it's using your skills. You know, if like that analogy of if you take a fish out of water and make it climb a tree, it's going to spend its whole life thinking that it's bad at climbing trees. But same is true for us as people. Everybody's good at something. Nobody's good at everything. So it's finding what you're good at and using that to the highest ability that you can. Not trying to be good at things you're not. I'm horrible at math. I'm horrible at science. I have a twin brother who's a intensivist doctor, and people look at us and being like, we're the polar opposite, you know, like he's a highly trained intensivist doctor, and I'm the exact opposite. But I didn't spend my whole life trying to be like my twin brother. I spent, I was early enough, I realized that if I could be myself and he could be himself, we wouldn't compete with each other for the rest of our lives, and we would, encourage each other to grow and go off in our own separate ventures and see if we can be world class at whatever we're doing. So that's leveraging who we are as people to the highest ability, not trying to be somebody else, I'm not trying to make video games, and I'm not trying to, a lot of things you guys are good at that I could never do. But if I just focus on what I'm good at and in a positive, constructive manner, and not being afraid to fail. I've never been good at anything in my life. If you ask my brothers, my best friend, like, we sucked at every sport. I was this skinny little Indian kid who couldn't jump, who couldn't run, was never really good at anything. But the only thing I'm really good at is failing. I can out-fail any of you here. So, because I've been a failure my whole life. I'm not scared to fail. Why would I be scared to fail? I can fail and get back up and keep trying again. And that's what will make you successful. So if you want to be a millionaire, just keep trying something over and over, and eventually you'll figure it out at any skill you're at. But don't be afraid to stick to one thing. You got to stick to one thing long enough to be successful at it. If you just keep failing and then turn another direction, fail that way, then you're just wasting your time. So you got to commit time too, but don't be scared to fail along the way to success.
Thank you. Sean, a little bit more about yourself, perhaps a little bit more about esports and what you do there, and what entrepreneurship means to you.
Okay, so I am Sean. So I've been a gamer for, oh, there we go. Oh, that's much better. You can all hear my deep voice. That's great. So, yeah, I'm from Richmond. I was a huge science nerd growing up. Biology and chemistry were my strong points. And because it was like my mom and dad were like, oh, he's going to be the doctor of the family, right? It's like I'm the first generation Canadian citizen of my family kind of deal, so I got to make everybody proud. On the way to that, I got accepted into UNBC on scholarship, and I was like, hey, that's my path. I'm not going to turn away from biochemistry. So that was not the case, though. In my first, besides my schooling, I was a huge gamer growing up. My favorite games were things like Donkey Kong 64, Mario Kart. I got into Modern Warfare, and I was pretty good at that. And then Smash Bros. Like, if you wanted to fight me in Smash Bros., raise your hands. Who here's played Super Smash Brothers? Yeah. All right. I'm going to make the statement right now is that I could probably beat all y'all. All right, there we go. And I did bring a console here to prove that statement. And if any of you yeah, you guys in the back? Okay, we'll talk later. So that's something I used to do. Was in high school, I'd go to UBC and compete in tournaments, but it wasn't really a thing because a lot of older people would be like, oh, competitive video gaming, you got to get on the VR. That's the thing of the future. And so it didn't get much funding, and it was always this grassroots kind of movement. Okay, so that's where I was when I was a high schooler. I graduated, came to Prince George, did university, and then I got really sick. I got super sick, actually. So sick that I couldn't get out of bed. All I could do was play video games. And so, in between trying to go to my OChem labs and telling my profs, hey, I'm actually really sick and the doctors don't know what's up, can I get an extension? I faced the adversity of the school system not being super flexible when they don't know what's wrong with you. And so I had to leave school behind for a bit. So there I am, staying in my room. I got a Nintendo 3DS, and I'm playing Super Smash Bros. On my Nintendo 3DS, and I'm like, I'm getting really good at this. So I went to a tournament that was hosted in Prince George. It was a small one, 20 people. And I came in like 5th. I was like, I've never competed here before. And so during my time when I was sick, I had the position of a student on the student governance body of UNBC. I was the event runner. So it was going to be my last year as that, since I wasn't a student anymore. So I was like, okay, my last event's going to be a Smash Bros. Tournament. And we had 60 people show up right off the bat. This was the first official Super Smash Bros. Tournament of that scale in northern BC. So I saw something there. It had the passion of my gaming. That's something I could do at home and I could organize on my own. It involved my love for technology. And so I started teaching myself skills for event management, advertising, marketing, digital design, graphic design, all the while trying to figure out what was wrong with me. In August that year, I decided to take the risk. I maxed out my credit card and I got a bunch of stuff ready to open up Volcanic Gaming, which would be, in my mind at the time, I was like, I want to make video gaming, competitive video gaming, a thing in Northern Canada. This was in a time where Korea was starting to decline in their esports movement, but then China and the US were leading. This was the same year that League of Legends had their finals in Paris and had a grand prize pool of $6 million for the top team. Each player walked away with $1 million. Yeah. That price has increased by 40% now for the grand prize pot. So back then I saw something we could bring to Northern BC to connect gamers of all sorts, technologists, entertainment doers, all that kind of jazz. The nerds that once I would hang out with when I went to the EXP bar every time I'd go and hang out back at home. And for 2 years, it was a struggle to set this up, even to prove to people that video gaming, game development, and all that stuff related to all that is a future career that no one's really looking into in Canada. After about a year of struggle, we got our first sponsorship with Nintendo. We ended up getting a following sponsorship with Hi-Res Studio, who's responsible for Smite, Paladins, Tribes, some super huge games. On top of that, we started working with local groups and companies. We are situated at the hub space, and ICS has been a huge help for us in terms of that, in terms of us becoming that platform of discussion. Oh, water. And right now, we're at a great time because I've seen the company hit rock bottom, I've seen it lose people, and I've seen it rise up. And we're at a point right now where we're talking with Shaw TV to start broadcasting esports on cable network. We would be the first esports group to be doing that for public access television in Canada. On top of that, we are in discussions with bigger developers like Capcom and Nintendo to actually show that, hey, there's a market here and that there are people here who are working jobs that are going to be super related to the career and the industry up there. So yeah, I went from biochem, I dropped out of university, and I became leader of an esports group in Canada. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. You mind passing the mic to Paul? Paul, same deal. A little bit more about yourself, perhaps what you do, and what entrepreneurship means to you.
Well, I am the proverbial trailer park kid from Prince George. Grew up in a trailer park all my life and didn't really ever fit in from day one. And got bullied all through school and just was like, I don't think this is the life for me. So for myself, I decided that I was going to get out of a negative situation, and I moved down to the Vancouver area, specifically to a place called Abbotsford, thinking that was the big city, and found out very quickly that that was not the big city. So I found myself there, and what I would say is that by the time I reached grade 12, all I could think about was business, and that's all I wanted to do. And tied to that, I guess just in the way that I grew up, I just always wanted to help people. And so I found a real passion for helping people who had small businesses. So basically I just said, well, why couldn't I just have a business that helps small businesses do business? So how do I does business? And so then I would just go in and say, like, what do you need help with? And it would be, it would start with little things like graphic design. And back then, this is like basically pre-internet for the most part. And it would start with like little things like graphic design, helping them with grassroots marketing, anything pretty much. And then eventually marketing came around, online marketing, web, all that kind of stuff. So I started growing that company on the side as I had a full-time job, eventually when I moved to Vancouver. And then when I was 24, I got my first real taste of experience in the actual true tech world. So I got invited to be the head of a social gaming company of all things. And when I say social gaming, oh, there we go. That's it. So when I say that, this is now for you guys, Facebook is now like kind of becoming a thing of the past, and I know everybody's on Snapchat and Instagram and all that stuff now. But to give you an idea, this is like 11 years ago, and I didn't even have a Facebook profile. But the guy came up to me and was like, I want you to run my company. Can you make online poker on the Facebook? And I was like, yeah, I can totally do that. I have no idea what I'm doing. So so he offered me a really nice salary and some shares in a company and told me to run the company. And so I did that. And I asked him very directly, like, why aren't you the one that's doing this if it's so important to you? He's throwing $30K a month in the drain on it. And he said, well, quite literally, because I am a-hole and I don't work well with people, and I don't know anything about tech. And you know the internet, so you can do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, sounds great. So he gave me a budget, I built a team, and then eventually we built up this online poker game on the Facebook, and it was going really, really well. And then all of a sudden the online poker world imploded. And the leading company in the world was called Bulldog, and the head of that company got arrested, and it was a real gray area. So then the owner walked in and said, you're in charge, you have to figure out something else. And I was like, what do I do? I'm 24, I have no idea what I'm doing. And so we actually ended up, it's a longer story, but we ended up switching to a suite of word games and puzzles. And the technology we'd built is actually, back then there was other social networks that were very popular. There was High Five, Friendster, Bebo, Orkut, and MySpace was back then, but it was dying, so everybody kind of started ignoring it. So the technology we built had actually connected the social networks together. So if you imagine a poker table, each person at the poker table could be from a different social network and playing together at the same time. And that was sort of our dream. So then eventually we turned it into a suite of word games and puzzles, that same thing. And it grew just crazily over the next 3 months, and suddenly it was like nuts. And then so we were, funny enough is that I actually ended up hiring somebody I went to high school with in Prince George. And he was working in Williams Lake at the time, building software for mills, but had a degree in AI development and software development, and was like totally hating his life. So I got him to come down, and we built this company together. And that's when I also got my first introduction into investor pitching, because the guy would be like, oh, hey, I met an investor, go pitch him. And I was like, yeah, cool. I've never done that before either, but sure. And so eventually we built this thing up. And then we've got like 80,000 daily active users, people actually paying money to do stuff in it. And then one day the owner walked in and is like, hey, what are you working on? And we're like, oh yeah, we're about to release a new game, we're working on some new features, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, cool, don't worry about it. And we're like, what? And he goes, yeah, I sold the company, so don't worry about it. You guys can pack your stuff and go. And we were like, what? And no, so that was my first taste, where I had shares in this company, but I didn't know what that meant when I signed on. And he kept giving more shares to me as we hit certain milestones. And so it was like, oh, okay. So he goes, here's who to contact to cash out on your shares, and see you later. And so that was my first taste. Now, it was nowhere near newsworthy, but it was my first taste of what they call a successful exit, I guess. But the downside for me was it didn't feel like it was mine. So then I was like, okay, it's time for me to really concentrate on, I want to do that again. I've got the taste now, but I want it to be mine. So I basically took that and put it into a real company, into the company I was working on before as a side hustle. And eventually grew that into a full-service digital agency, which I exited a couple of years ago. So what I say a lot of times is I've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years. I've had a couple of successful exits, as they say, but a few failures to help get me there. A lot of things that I learned along the way. And ultimately, I've been lucky enough now to be able to take all of that and everything I've learned over the years and now work on a daily basis with entrepreneurs and startups at our firm called Volition, which is a startup advisory firm. Me and two partners are the firm. We're a team of 8.5, and we work with startups and entrepreneurs, anywhere from I've got an idea on a napkin, I'm not sure what to do next, all the way to I'm seriously fundraising for my company and I have no idea what to do next. So we run the whole gamut and help them in pretty much every aspect of their business, wherever they need help. But I think for me, what entrepreneurship means is the overcoming of adversity, the problem solving, the amazing ideas and things that people do. I'll give a great example is I'm working with a company called BioPep, and they're curing cancer, prostate cancer, using leech saliva. Like this is, and they're based in Richmond, of all places. Like it's nuts. And they're doing it in a sustainable way that doesn't even kill the leeches. They just harvest the saliva, and then they're making this solution that they inject, and it kills the cancer cells. Like this stuff is just unbelievable to me, and I feel honored to work every day with these companies and these entrepreneurs and help them get funding and help them persevere and be successful. So I'll end off with saying, for me, I've always gauged my success on the success of others, and for us, that's one of our modicums at Volition. And then on the side of that, I'm also I have another tech company that I'm also running at the same time called BrickClick, which is in the retail tech space, and I'm a father of 3 young boys. Yeah, so it keeps me a bit busy.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. How do they make the leeches drool 24/7?
Lots of blood? I'm not sure, yeah.
So you mentioned 2 words in there, just want to clarify. Shares, what are they? And side hustle, what does that mean?
Yeah, so when you have a company, like let's say you went into a company solo, just on your own, when you incorporate and create that company, you'll be assigned shares. There's shares in that company, and shares is exactly what it sounds like. It's what you can share essentially amongst the people within that company, whether it's within or as investors. So when you're alone, you would own all the shares. But then if you have a co-founder, somebody who comes in on the business with you, or a partner, if you want to call it that, then you would potentially give them shares as well to help you run that company. And then the other side of that is then, as you go along, depending on the type of company, you can sell shares at a certain valuation to investors, and then they buy shares in your company, and that's how you create valuation. So for my example, the retail tech company I have is currently worth $3 million because investors are willing to pay 44 cents a share in the company and buy a portion of the company to help it grow and get to the next stages. So yeah, and then the other one was side hustle. Yeah, so the side hustle essentially, I mean, the funny thing is I'll actually look back about, gosh, what is that, about 13, 14 years ago, when I still had a full-time job. Now I don't know what that means, but you know, when I still had a full-time job, it was, the culture back then was actually, it was frowned upon to have a side hustle. Like normally when a company, if they found out you were doing something on the side, they'd be like, what the heck are you doing? You clearly don't need to work here anymore. If that's your focus, then go elsewhere, right? I was really super lucky that I worked with a company in West Vancouver. They were an extended warranty company. So what that means is they administrated extended warranties for like Whirlpool and American Express. Try to give you names of something you might know. And amongst like 30 other programs. But the amazing thing is that I've always had a knack for processes and systems. So I actually walked into their company and was like, your software's really bad. Like it's really clunky, the flow's not right in it, da-da-da-da. And then after multiple conversations, and here I am, I'm like this 22-year-old kid, and I'm telling them that their software is not very good. And then so we ended up having multiple conversations, and then they're like, why? And the luckily thing is I could go directly straight to the owners of the company because it was a family-owned business. It still is. It's called the Walker Group. And, you know, I went directly to the owners, and I was quite a friendly kid, and they respected me, I guess, which was really cool. And they kept asking, well, why? Why is it so bad? And I said, well, it feels like to me that the claims center and the administrative component has never ever talked to the developers. And so it's the age-old thing of, in our industry in tech, predominantly years ago, it used to be developers would build something and go, well, here you go, it works. And then you would go, well, but it doesn't look very good. And how do I use this button? And this doesn't make sense to go from here to here. And now we incorporate things like UI, UX is what it's called. So user interface versus user experience. But back then that didn't really happen. And so that was what was happening here, is that nobody talked to each other and said, oh, well, that's not the right flow, and this button shouldn't be here, it should be here, and so on and so forth. And I just said, I think nobody's talking to each other. And they were like, well, Paul, why don't you be the conduit for that? And I was like, cool, sounds great. I have no idea how to do software. Like, that's not my thing. But sounds interesting. And so I became this conduit, and then that was when I started really gaining an interest in software development and tech, and how that could be a solution to lives, and how it could really make things easier for people. And so that was when I really started my side hustle. And so I said, well, if I can do this, I can do stuff for other businesses. So I just started going out and approaching other businesses and saying, how can I help you with your needs? And then a side hustle was essentially that I would do that work on the side. I mean, it sounds pretty obvious, right? I would do that on the side from the side of my desk off of the full-time job. The thing I was really lucky with is that they liked it and supported me and let me have my desk as my own little office, and then would let me book meetings in their office, because everything that I did on the side actually helped them. Because as I was learning things and doing things with other businesses, I would bring it back to them purposely, strategically, and I would say, hey, I learned this and this and this. We should apply this to the Walker Group. And they'd be like, cool, sounds good. That's your role, so get her done, right? So yeah, that's a side hustle, so yeah.
Okay, thank you guys. I think you've described your high school self. Everyone has. So where are you today? What is a typical, it might be hard to define that, but what does a typical 24-hour period look like for you in under a minute or less? And I'm going to time you time this time.
I'll start. Do I have the mic, I guess? Okay, so a typical day for me starts at about 7:30. I wake up. I generally try to help my wife get the kids ready for school. Then I quickly get ready. I head normally downtown. My day is typically filled with meetings with entrepreneurs and startups and investors almost all day. So it's usually meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. And luckily I have an office downtown, so a lot of them come to me now, so that's pretty cool. Usually I get yelled at by somebody by about 3 o'clock saying, have you eaten lunch yet? And I say, oh, right, lunch. Forgot about that, yes. I call it the entrepreneur's lunch. And so normally I haven't eaten by that point, so somebody gives me trouble for that, so I'll find a snack or something. And then normally I work until about 6:30, then I head home. I spend some time with the kids, have dinner, take them to bed, and then I hop on my computer, and I usually work until about 2 in the morning. Yeah, that's my typical day. But there's some wins and losses within there, but it's some pretty cool stuff. Usually pretty exciting stuff. And then in there, on some days, our company also runs, we have an event division, so we also run events about once a week. And so about once a week, I'm usually out running and emceeing those events and supporting the community, as it were.
So my day starts at 6 a.m. Wake up, get some breakfast in me, and then I do professional development for about an hour or so. So it's either web development for front end and back end, or social media development. So I'm learning about Facebook Blueprint. Then I head to the office. I start taking a look at which sponsors we need to contact, what upcoming events we have. I also run a little side business, like a custom shirt thing, so I usually talk to him too. Yeah, I'm the side hustle. Yeah. Yeah, no. So I'm a graphic designer by that, right? So I do some client work too. So for the first half of the day, it's all just graphic design, website, social media development stuff. And then I don't eat. until my girlfriend kind of harangues me about eating. So I have my entrepreneur lunch probably later in the day. So in the afternoon, I'm just working on how to develop Volcanic's site better, working on our web platform, what schools, what groups, what people we need to reach out to, and because Volcanic's a team of 7 people, including myself, touching base with each of them. And then in the evening, we do our Twitch broadcasts. So I'm usually broadcasting onto Twitch, so it's about 2 hours of that. I do some reading, then I do some coding, and then I hit the bed.
Those days sound pretty busy compared to mine. So my days are pretty relaxed in the sense of, because I've been an entrepreneur from such a young age, I used to work crazy hours, and then I realized that I was just running in circles. So I've identified the 3 areas of my life where I really need to focus on. So when it comes to my career, all that matters is every day I do something to grow the overall business that I'm focusing on, something for growth. I do something for learning, so I take time to read, I take time to listen to podcasts or articles, whatever it is, and then I spend time working on the company culture. So my days usually, I wake up around 6, well, I have a newborn, she's 3 weeks, so it's a little bit earlier now, but before that, I would wake up around 6:45, I would shower, I would take my time, I meditate in the mornings to relax, because I'm a high energy person, and then I slowly get to the office, and along the way I'm listening to podcasts, I'm reading, I take time to spend time with my wife, because family is very important to me. So I only work between 9 o'clock and about 4 o'clock, and in those times I don't like to take too many meetings. If nothing affects those 3 areas of my career, I try not to do it. I try not to get bogged down in meetings and talking to this person about useless facts, because it doesn't matter to me. I have managers in place, I can meet with them once a week. I have systems in place for who I have to meet with when, and I try not to, if anything outside of those 3 things, I don't try to focus on. So when I'm at the office, I'm either doing something growth related, learning related for myself, because the smarter I get, the more potential my companies have, and something culturally related for the company, whether it's being a good leader, stopping and talking with an individual employee. I have meetings set up with individual employees based on their task maturity. So some employees I need to meet with daily, some could be weekly, some could be bi-weekly, some could be monthly, or like our accountants or lawyers quarterly. So those are all pre-set up, and anything outside of that, I try not to bog down. I don't work evenings. When I get home, my phone is plugged in. I want to spend time with my wife, my child, whoever else. I don't work weekends. And those are limitations I set upon myself, because I want to be an entrepreneur for the long run. I'm not in it to be rich or to work crazy hours. It's not what I've decided I don't want to do anymore. So yeah, my days are pretty relaxed. But you can still be effective being relaxed. It's not that you have to work 20 hours a day to be successful. You can be successful working 4 hours a day or 2 hours a day if you spend the time doing what actually matters and leveraging your time. So we talked about leverage earlier. Leverage is using something, getting the most out of something. So my time is the most precious commodity that I have. So if it's not being spent with my wife and my kid or my immediate family or on my personal self, when it comes to work, it's being spent on something that's growth-oriented, culture-oriented, or learning-oriented. That's it.
Thank you. One of the people I admire a lot as an entrepreneur in Vancouver, and 1,000 times more successful than I am, or perhaps might be, and had somehow accomplished to building and selling fairly large companies and working less than 25 hours a week. And I asked how. He said, "I'm really good, and I hate doing things. I'm really good at figuring out how not to do anything." So I tried to do that.
I'm actually a very lazy person. As a kid, I've always been super lazy. So being lazy is sometimes, like I said, that's another thing that I was criticized for as a kid, is you're lazy. So I'm good at being lazy. I'm very good at being lazy. So I know exactly what I have to do to leverage my time. Like, I don't need to have 10 meetings a day with the same people talking about the same stuff. I establish, for each one of my employees, we establish what matters in their position, and we measure those, and I don't have to meet with them daily to say, did you show up on time today? Whatever is relevant in that part of the business, let them focus on it, give them the authority to focus on it, and we measure the numbers. People lie, the numbers never lie. So if I have a system in place to measure the metrics that I need that are important to me, and they get to me, filtered to me, then I could use my time effectively.
Just wanted to comment. So what you guys probably just heard was a very large variance of how we sort of run our companies, right? So I just wanted to comment on that. And I mean, all due respect, like, you know, obviously I dream of that life, and I think that that would be fantastic. But I just wanted to make a couple comments to that. So, you know, on the other side of that, I would say that, you know, entrepreneurship is also very situational, and what I would ultimately say is that one of the great things about entrepreneurship is you do sort of get to control and decide what that path looks like. So what I would say for myself is that strategically over the last 20 years, I've set up things systematically so that I have sort of my own cycle that works for me. So everybody's different, right? And so I know when I wake up in the morning and when I finish my day, I still have a sort of cycle within there, and I've made sure that I have a system, not within myself only, but also because I'm married with 3 kids. My wife and I have a very good system set up as well in communication basis to say, like, you know, when we're younger, we would all call it whipped, but you know, the reality is that, you know, the background on that story is when I exited from my last company, and my wife was like, well, now what? And I said, well, I think I'm going to start a new business. And she's like, oh God, here we go again. So we said, okay, let's set some ground rules, because now we have kids this time. And so, like, our structure is that I have 2 nights a week that I can do for business related stuff, where I can stay out and keep doing business related stuff, be it an event or meeting with an investor or whatever. And I don't work on weekends unless I absolutely have to. I have 1 day per 1 weekend per month, where it might be like for Yale Canada, where I'm doing a mentoring thing, or I'm going to do something like that, proto hack or hackathon or something like that. And then I generally don't travel unless I absolutely have to. So yes, on my side, I do work long hours, but mine is situational, and I do have control of it. But the reality is in my world, I have investors who've invested, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars into my company. And so I feel, on my side, I feel this immense responsibility to get them a return. And so I work endlessly, and I have a lot of people that I feel like I put that weight on my shoulders, but that's my decision. But speaking of strengths, my strength is managing time, managing people, and putting together amazing teams. So quite honestly, a lot of my work is meetings and then delegating. And that's a lot of what my work is, and having a reliable, trustworthy team that I can just go and be at something like this, where I'm just like, cool, I know everybody at the head office has everything kind of handled, and I can do stuff like this and help the community and do stuff like that. So yeah, it's purely situational. So, you know, it really depends. What I would ultimately say is entrepreneurship is also getting to know thyself and knowing what you're capable and not. I would highly recommend, obviously, not killing yourself over something like doing a business, but the reality is your day is filled with customers and cash, and so you kind of do whatever it takes. It's a child. You have to take care of it. You have to nurture it.
Yeah. So
Sean wants to.
Is it okay if I
well, let's continue on. I want to, because so this the challenge and the growth around being effective and productive with time, because it is your most valuable resource, and how you manage that and where you choose to spend your time and when to say yes and when to say no, and the fact that you got to be willing to go to crazy lengths at various points in time is something that has always existed amongst entrepreneurs, and really is at the crux, I think, of the entrepreneurial mindset, which is, I want to be effective with less. So you'll see this surface a lot, and it's not like you get really good at some point. It's I think it's a continual journey for many people. So I do want to shift the conversation because I want to leave a lot of time for questions. I've got so many, so I'm going to try and narrow down maybe to one here, and then pass it to more of the audience, and we'll intersperse at certain points. Who here has heard of TED.com? Yes. Okay. Those who haven't, Google, the Google when you the type will tell you TED.com, awesome. So the most watched TED Talk of all time. Ken Robinson specifically said curiosity is the engine of achievement. And having worked with a lot of young entrepreneurs, people often ask me, what's the number one trait, characteristic that you think defines success over the long term? For me, it's curiosity and people who invest in that. So what are your thoughts around curiosity? What has your relationship with that been like? How do you invest in curiosity when you lose your drive? How do you respark curiosity?
So curiosity, for me, has been such a beneficial part of my growth as an individual. The reason I give the background on my university career and my high schooling is that it's completely unrelated to what I'm doing right now. And if I was not curious enough to see if there was an opportunity for something I could offer with my skill set, the other opportunities that I've been able to take in my life would not happen. I think curiosity is something that we don't need to quell, and it's something we shouldn't kill inside of ourselves the older we get. I think that we need to be able to live a life where we can be met with a bunch of doors. Like, for example, let's say you lost that awesome job today. A lot of people be like, that kind of sucks. That really does suck, that 9 to 5 that was keeping my life stable. I've been there. And it's opened up opportunities that if I wasn't curious in those moments, I was like, okay, it's time to pick up a new skill. It's time to pick up a new habit, whatever. And it was more stagnant of a belief for, oh, I just need to get another job that's not related to what I want to do in life. I don't think that would fulfill me as a human being. And I think that's why curiosity is super important. It's that it's such an essential part. It's a part of our species. I mean, that's why we're here in buildings and we have electronic devices that can connect us around the world in less than a nanosecond. If we weren't curious, we would not have growth as a species.
Have you guys seen the commercial, the new commercial? I know kids don't watch a lot of TV these days and skip the commercials, but has anybody here seen the new Google one where they're questioning everything? So they start off like, basically sentences ended with a period, and what if we changed everything to a question mark? So they say, do cars have to cars can drive themselves, and then change it to a question mark, or do cars need drivers, I think, or something like that. And then it's like, so the ultimate thing is actually, I really love that commercial. It's one of my favorite commercials, and it's so simple, but it actually speaks to, at this most simplest level, it speaks to entrepreneurship. So, like, the curiosity is asking a question, right? And I'm going to actually say for a second, part of good entrepreneurship is not only asking the question, but listening for the answer. And so, you know, part of what I do in my world is I'm always listening. And when somebody says, oh, yeah, you know, I wish there was a better way to do this, you know, it's like, oh, cool, but would you pay to have that happen? And so a great example is, like, I was meeting with an investor of mine, and we were talking about both of us are in situations where we have a lot of project management going on, so we're using project management softwares, but every single one we incur are clunky and hard to use and da-da-da-da. And he said, you know, I wish there was a better way. And I said, well, actually, I've had an idea where, you know, I wish you could just do project management using your voice. Just seems to make sense, right? And having a virtual assistant that, you know, you just tell it, like, I need a agreement written up for this or that, and you have templates in the system. And anyways, and he goes, oh, if you built that, I would invest tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, would you now? I don't have enough to do, so why don't I start that as another project? So, you know, it's always listening and looking for those opportunities. But, you know, going at the very basis, you know, I mentioned the company that is trying to cure prostate cancer using leech saliva. That all started from a doctor questioning, how does the cancer actually spread? And then he knew a guy in Thailand that has found this process that he was actually using leeches to reduce it and actually had effective treatments. and I don't know if you know, but like I think the statistic now is 1 in 3 or 4 men will develop prostate cancer in our lifetime. Like it's nuts. So to me, well, literally, I guess, but didn't do that on purpose. But you know, he just questioned why that was, and it came down to they found out that prostate cancer spreads by making your blood thicken. It doesn't flow as well, so it kills off surrounding cells. So they said, well, what if we were to make the blood thinner so that it flowed better? Well, what does that? Leeches, because they have to do that to suck your blood out. Oh, well, maybe there's a way we can do that. And then and it's all about questioning and being curious about how do we solve these things. And that's, you know, that's entrepreneurship to a T, I think, in my view.
So yes, I believe that being successful is very simple. It's knowing what to do and then having the courage to do it. So that first part, knowing what to do, only comes if you're curious about how things work. Like for myself, I've always been curious about business models. I can, you know, if you take it any company, whether it can be a construction company or a photography, whatever it is. So I'm curious about breaking down the model of, okay, so who's the customers and who's paying and, you know, where are the materials coming from. So breaking down a business model. So any idea that you guys ever have and you think that, hey, I could get rich doing this or I'd want to be in this career. So if you're curious enough about it, just take the time to break down the model. Figure out, you know, where the supplies are coming from, who's paying for it, who's the customers, what's their base, how are they marketing it, what channel, how are they selling it. Be curious enough to ask those questions, and you'll see if there's an opening there. The easiest way to have any idea is to test it. You build the minimum viable product. I mean, back in the day, if you had any idea, you would need to raise money. You would need millions of dollars to, you know, buy a computer or test the idea. We're living in an age where it's the easiest time ever to start anything. And you need a minimum amount of money to start anything. So, and you have access to information, which before you had to go to, you get an MBA in business just to learn how to put, you know, a corporation together. Well, you can Google it. If you can't figure something out these days, then it's because you're not curious about it. So, if you're truly curious about anything, you can teach it to yourself and figure out the models and figure out the information of where it's coming from. This idea I had over the last year of smart home is something that I knew nothing about, but I know that if I'm curious about something, I'll knock on enough doors, I'll ask the right questions, and eventually, entrepreneurship is like an art. Like an artist, the picture is slowly coming together. At first, when you have an idea, it's the waters are murky. Like I joke, I say I'm like Bane, you know, like Bane in Batman, where he's like, you know, Bruce Wayne merely adopted the darkness. He was born in the darkness. Like I thrive in the dark. So when it's dark, you can't see anything. But if you slowly relax and get used to it, and the picture will eventually come together. So, and that's what starting a business is like. Is at first it's a room full of darkness, and eventually the light will slowly turn on. You'll see where connections can be made. Only if you're willing to venture in the dark. If you walk around the dark room, you can, even with your eyes closed, you can map it out, and that's a business. Having the courage to try and to figure out what's going on and where these connections are working and who's buying what and who's dealing with who, and not being afraid to look like an idiot. Like if you're not afraid to look like an idiot, you can do anything in this world. And yeah, I'm not afraid to look like an idiot. I look like an idiot 90% of the time, and I like that. But that's the thing. When you're a kid, you're so scared of what your friends are gonna think, or what people will say if you fail, or if, you know, what if I suck. But that's the, you know, the wrong attitude. I'm 30 years old. I just turned 36 months ago, and I learned that through sheer failure and discouragement. So if you can adopt that at a young age and know that success is failure, and so being curious enough about anything, you'll keep failing until you figure it out. That's, yeah. I kind of went off on a tangent, but yeah, curiosity is good.
Thank you.
One very quick thing to that. So my uncle, who passed away earlier this year, he had a great saying that went in line with that, is that if you're knocking on doors and they're saying no, either you don't know enough or they don't know enough, so you can do a better job and iterate and get a yes.
There's the vacuum sales question.
That's the vacuum cleaner.
So thank you guys for sharing that. I know in my own life, I think I was similar to Georgie in the sense where I had to be hit over the head and fail until finally, my brain asked the question, why isn't this working? to start turning on that curiosity tap. So I want to turn it to the audience. I've got some questions I'll wrap up with. I can intersperse here, but if anyone has a question that they want to ask, it can be to anyone. It can be to one person in particular. We'll come around with a mic.
So, this is for Sean. Did they ever find out what affected you while you were sick during that year?
Oh, yeah. I had a huge tumor in my gut.
Ooh.
That would do it. Yeah, that'll hurt you. It wasn't. It was like, yeah, it was pretty gnarly. They showed me pictures of it, and they didn't know if it was cancer for about 3 months. So I was kind of like waiting. I mean, during that time, I had the choice to be really scared and like just shut down and give up on certain things. But what I did was I chose the mentality of these 3 months are super uncertain, and if it's not anything bad, then that's the whole my rest of my life is uncertain anyways. So let's live every day as if it's going to be my last. So I accelerated myself, and yeah, we did find out, and I was like, oh, okay, neat. So I'm okay now. Yeah. Oh yeah, they removed it. It didn't. It's not still. It's not a resident anymore in this real estate market. Do we have any more questions for anyone?
Still live with it in the jar beside you.
Yes, and yeah. So I only participate in the competitions I'm not hosting, because the competitions that we host are, we have a pretty large pool, and I just feel personally bad walking away with my own prizing. And so I encourage other people to be content creators, just because the way Volcanic is starting to move into is that we're becoming less of the event maker, and we're becoming more of the platform. So if you want to run a tournament, we'll provide overlays, we'll do setup, we'll do AV, all that jazz, and then I'll compete. But I have gotten rusty. So yeah, that's the first question you said?
Yeah. The second one, Jesus. The second one is like, out of pure curiosity, what's your absolute favorite game to play?
You know, I think the game I'll always go back to is oh man, this is like not too old for you guys. Do you guys know the Metroid series? Metroid? Okay. So Metroid Prime, that trilogy? Okay. That, like, it's a game that nails a first-person explorer shooter super right, because you can spend hours in that game unlocking secrets. And like you get to explore these alien worlds, so it like gets that biologist part of me, that xenobiologist that I want to do that stuff, and then you learn about all these different species after you blow them up, and you're like, oh, that's a shame. Rip. They had feelings. No, that's probably my favorite game in the franchise that I play is the Metroid series.
So I got a question for Terry on Ripple. Haven't smart houses been designed before and apps for them before? Like, where are you new in this game, and what do you plan on expanding with in this?
Yeah, so smart home technology has been around for a while now, but the biggest thing we were trying to impact was making it just a simpler process for people to get. Like right now, the biggest player in the market was a company called Vivid, and you may have seen their advertisement around, or security companies, but they're so freaking expensive. Like it's $80 to $100 a month to get a couple cameras and lights and locks, and then they lock you into a 5-year contract, which at the end of the day, for about $1,500 worth of hardware, you'll pay about $6,000. and they're a strong sales organization. So they get you all excited and they sell you and then they get you in a contract and the remorse is huge. And I saw this, but it was like, but they have to do that. They have to make a profit, right? So the idea for me was if I could use, so the internet was where I saw my biggest value that I can add, being an internet company. But if I just sell internet, all I can really sell is cheaper internet. I can't do better internet. It's just internet, right? Shaw, TELUS, if I'm Ripple, it's just internet. So the idea was to have a value-added service on top of the internet that we could do at cost. So I'm going to give you smart home automation I'm not going to make any money on it, whereas Vivint is making a lot of money on it. I mean, they partner with a company called Goldman Sachs. I don't know if you heard of them, but they make them a lot of money. So the goal for me was, so how can I add value in a way that's super simple? So to do that, firstly, we have no contracts. We have no data limits on the internet. So to do that, that means now I've got to give you good service. If you ever tried to call TELUS before, you're waiting. But the thing is, they don't have to pick up your call because you're in a contract. So what are you going to do, right? They know that. And so having those things in place, we could just be a better customer service organization. Sometimes when people say better customer service, that doesn't mean anything. It's bullshit. But in this sense, better customer service is finding all the customer pain points that prevented people from getting this service, which was, it was expensive, it was tedious, they didn't understand it. So yeah, so us, it was. I didn't invent anything new. I'm not an inventor. All I am is I'm a curator of business because, like I said, my skill is I don't know anything about anything. I know people a little bit. I know what makes people happy. So it's how can I get into this space and impact people, not from a technical standpoint, but just make it easier. So I'm gonna form a company that's 3 companies in one and just give you one service. So for one bill, you get your internet, your home automation, and your security all for one package. And then on top of that, we'll finance the hardware. So you don't have to pay. It costs money. Like your average house to automate it, they have smart door locks which you can lock and sensors on the doors and thermostats. It's going to be it's like $1,200 to $1,500, and it can be all the way up to $3,000, and you're not going to want to pay that up front. So I have to finance it to you. But what if I finance it to you on a non-term contract, so you can pay it off whenever you want it, or if you sell the house, you can assign that contract to the next person that buys it. So you're not stuck with me to the point where I don't have to give you good service. So everything is month to month and no contracts. So nothing new. We're just a better way of doing it. So you don't have to be an inventor to start a new business. You just have to have an innovative way of doing it. So that's what I'm trying to do.
So it seems that all of you started starting businesses and at a really young age. Did you have families that supported your entrepreneurialism? And if not, how did you get through that adversity? Yes, please.
Yes, so for me, I was a first generation. My parents were from India, and no, they didn't really understand it because my sister was a pharmacist, and my brother wanted to be a doctor, and I wanted to be like a bum, like an entrepreneur. So no, but I always read a lot of books since I was a kid. So like just by reading, I had my mentors were these guys like Warren Buffett and Charles Koch and Ray Dalio, guys you've probably never heard of, but but for me, so just by reading and having the confidence, and eventually, I think they kind of wrote me off for a long time, and it wasn't about till I was like 26, 27 that it was all starting to come together where they were like, hey, this kid, might have something here. So yeah, I think but innate, I knew that this was like, you have your gut feeling of this is what I'm good at and what I want to do, and then just turning the blinders on of like tunnel vision. Like, so I'm not like, for those from 19 to about 27, I worked like 7 days a week, like 16 hours a day. But I just kept failing at first, so it didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. So yeah, it was just having, even if people around you don't support you, just having the confidence to gut it out. But you gotta have like your own indicators of like, am I wasting all my money and effort into a failed venture? So that's why I mentioned in the beginning profit and value. Like people gotta pay for your stuff. At some point, you can't be relying on sponsors and stuff like that. It's gotta create real revenue to stick around, to raise a family off of, and feed your kids too, right?
So I'm 23. I turned 23 this year, so I'm not much older than most of the folks here. So I dropped the news that I wasn't going to be able to go to school because of my health in 2014. So my parents were super understanding about that, and they wanted me to come back home.
and I was really wanting to go back home, but I felt like there was something I just could do more here. So I stayed for a year, and I grabbed a job. I was the publisher for our school's newspaper for a bit, and I really got tired of that. And I told Mom and Dad, I'm just going to open my own business. I said, competitive gaming is the way of the future. People may not understand it now, but people said the same thing about in the 80s when they said computers are never going to catch on. You mean that? No, typewriters are here to and that's the thing. That's the thing is that there's always going to be that group of people who don't understand it, and it sucks the most when it's the people who you love the most too. So my parents fell into the group of the people who didn't get it, and so I kind of was like, I decided to own that. Where if I can't sell it to my parents, I can't sell it to anybody. And so things were pretty rough, where like every time I get a phone call, I get an earful from my dad saying I should go back to university. If I'm strong enough to do my own business, I'm strong enough to get a degree done. And my mom being super worried as she saw the financials just depleting and depleting. But it came from a place where they didn't understand, because they're from Sri Lanka, and I'm the first generation Canadian of the family. I'm the eldest as well, so I'm the example child, right? Oops. Hey, don't worry, my sister's doing a psych degree, so they got that. And I mean, like my little brother, so my mom and dad started super young. I'm 23. I have a sister who's 18, a sister who's 16, and a little brother who's just turned 7. And so I think they were more worried about what kind of example am I sending. Until last year was the big pivotal year. Both my parents ended up in the ICU, and I was able to just come and be there and take care of them. And I think it really changed the way they saw the family unit, instead of it being a degree anymore or that value, because they worked super hard, super hard immigrant life to give this ideal to their child. It kind of, I mean, through that tough hardship, our family really strengthened, and it was like, oh, you know what, Sean, you're doing amazing stuff, and now they're super supportive of it.
For me, it's actually a little bit of a different story. My parents didn't come from a different place, or I don't have that first generation side of it, but on my side, I was actually a musician. When I moved away from home, I moved out when I was 16. And I moved to Abbotsford and rented a basement suite and went to school and worked at the same time. But I was a musician as well, and so that was what I was doing on the side. And so what I can say is my mom was not all too supportive of that, because she was worried about the lifestyle that one could partake in being in music, especially when I moved out of home and I'm on the road and I'm touring and blah, blah, blah. On the other side of it, when I told her at 19 that I was thinking of starting a business, I was very lucky that she was actually like, that sounds great. You'll probably be actually really awesome at that, because you're really good at problem solving and you are confident when you're talking to people and you can sell things. So the funny thing is that my mom actually has never really understood what I do. And it's okay. I mean, that's fine. She just knows that I love doing what I do, and is very supportive of that. So I've been lucky that I've never had any kind of expectations set on me in that sense. I've always set them on myself. But one comment I did want to say is that, you know, my hope is always that parents will support their kids through whatever they choose to do, and I'm that way with my own children. The one thing I would say is that entrepreneurship can be a very lonely journey, but and sometimes tough to find people to support you. But I would say that ultimately, out of all of that, do remember that there's other people out there as well, and it's important to find mentors and advisors and people around you that can support you through that journey. And I mean, I'll say for myself, that was something that I didn't do for many years, but I'm very happy to say that even at this point in my career, I still have an advisor, or actually I have an advisory board, but and a mentor that I can lean on because my wife and my mom, I don't really have a support system within my family that really understands what I do. My mom my wife is a stay-at-home mom, so her world is the kids and school activities. And when I come home and I say, oh yeah, I just raised $680,000, and she's like, cool. So the kids pooped in the bathtub, and this one won't eat, and it's like it's a whole different thing. So but then I can celebrate successes and failures with my mentors and advisors, and there's always people there. You just have to be open to talking to them and aware that they are out there. So yeah, bit of a different side for me.
So I've got a couple of rapid fire questions, which means they are ones you can answer in one word. I'll give a little bit of freedom to go a bit further, but just sort of real quick answers for each of you. And while I'm doing that, Sagar, if you can double check if there are any questions online that we can pull too. So what is your favorite podcast?
None. Yeah. Can I preface that? No? Okay.
I don't have one. I mean, the Joe Rogan podcast, because it challenges my views.
Tim Ferriss or Reid Hoffman, Masters of Scale.
So you're going to have a lot of preface on this then, Terry. What's the book you gift the most? And if you don't gift a lot of books, what book do you recommend the most?
Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's probably the best book I've read.
It's either The Count of Monte Cristo or No More Mr. Nice Guy.
None.
No preface. What do you eat for breakfast?
Nothing. Generally speaking, sometimes I do, but generally nothing. I had breakfast this morning.
I didn't, but but usually it's 2 eggs and a breakfast smoothie consisting of blackberries, blueberries, strawberries, and some spinach.
Yeah, I have a protein shake for breakfast. I eat the same thing every day.
Yeah. What's the best $100 you've spent?
I bought this app called Headspace for meditation. If you ever heard of it, try it if you ever want to use it. $100 a year.
So I'm a big Transformers collector. There's this sick deal for this Optimus Prime from Japan. It's like usually $200, but I got it for $100, and I was like, okay.
For me, funny enough, not 100, I'm going to say 99. I bought a domain about 11 years ago that I bought for $99, and I sold it 8 months later for $3,000. So that was pretty cool.
Which domain was that?
I can't tell you.
Amazing.
It was actually, it doesn't have a great name, so I don't really want to say it. Yeah.
So knowing what you know now, what one thing would you do differently in high school, or what would you done more of or less of? In a sentence.
I would have, if I could go back, I would have ignored the negativity and just been me.
I would have taken a year off, just to figure my own path out, and I'm pretty sure I would have come to where I am right now a little sooner.
Like between grade 11 and 12, or after high school?
After high school, just so like, I mean, don't stay in school. Don't stay in school, folks. Yeah, no, because I think a lot of students, I won't go too deep into this, but a lot of students, they end up going straight into university, and they're like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And like 80%, and this is totally anecdotal.
One sentence.
Like 80%.
One sentence.
People just drop out.
I think I would have had the confidence to just be myself and not try to be something I'm not, and embracing all the things that I suck at or my quirkiness or whatever it is.
If you could put any message on a billboard anywhere in Canada, what would be on that billboard and where would you place it?
I would put it outside my front door, and it would say, just breathe.
I know for sure I'd put it right in front of like the part of the hospital where the parents walk out with their kids when they have like a newborn, and just straight up, it'll be okay. I think that takes off a lot of pressure.
That was in the SkyTrain downtown.
Whoa!
Yeah, waterfront. Somebody put that up. Yeah, up on the walls when you were walking past. It said it just said it'll be okay, and there was no ad or anything. It just was Anyways, so it happened. Yeah. Mine would actually be, so at Volition we have a motto that I've followed for many, many years, and I would say, honestly, I've actually built an entire career on you never know what can come from a conversation. So don't be afraid to have a conversation and throw things on the table, because you never know.
Where would you place that?
Every damn where, but one place. I would place it outside of like an entrepreneurial or business school.
Okay. So do we have any online questions we want to address? No, okay. So maybe one of my closing questions, and I want to give you each sort of 1 minute if you have a closing thought. We'll take an extra 5 here. So what question do you want to leave the audience with? Not a statement, but a question to think and ponder.
I would like everybody here to question how can they have the greatest impact with the skill set that they naturally have.
So how can you have the greatest impact with the skill set that you have?
How do you leverage yourself, whoever you are, leverage yourself to the greatest amount that you can?
Okay. Similarly, along the lines, is ask yourself this question, and it applies to you of all ages, is what do you enjoy doing? And how can you become the best at enjoying what you enjoy doing? So how can you get the most of that thing you do, right? Therein, it'll start this journey that you never thought was possible.
2 questions in one, see? Entrepreneurs always break the rules. It's true.
So I'm going to break the rule by saying that it's a statement that could be a question. So the statement would be, just realize that the entire world is open to you. The way, like it was kind of alluded to before that, you know, I mean, when I was growing up, when you wanted information, you had to go to the library, right? Now you can look it all up online. Everything's accessible. So the question I would leave you with is I guess to put it down to a basic is, am I stuck? So, and remembering that you're not, you can do anything you want. You've got the entire world open to you. This is not a bubble. You can stay here and do what you want to do, but you can do it anywhere. So, yeah.
That's interesting. Am I stuck? I still remember when Steve Jobs said he used to ask himself every morning, if I could do anything in the world today, would I be doing what I'm doing today? And if he answered no 7 days in a row, he'd made a drastic change. Am I stuck? Interesting. We do have one online question.
So this question is from Mike Hawkers. He's asking each of you is, how much money is in your bank account at this moment? And do you take vacations?
So anybody who knows me knows that when I'm around and if they talk about vacation, this is going to sound really bad again, and Terry's going to judge me. But I often say, what's a vacation? Is that an app on your phone? And a friend of mine who I work with goes, not on your phone, Paul, not on your phone. In all honesty, to answer the account question, I don't know if I want to answer that, but it depends which account. So, and in business, one way that I've set up things is I have a holdings account, which is where everything goes in, from my investments to my companies, and all that's my inflow. So that one's a lot bigger. And then my personal account actually literally right now has $130 in it.
Yeah. Yeah, so we don't...
I pay tax on stuff I take out, so I don't want to.
Thank you. And each of you three can answer that how you like. I know money's only one measurement of wealth. Maybe that's not hinting at wealth. I don't know what the question's getting to, but I'll let you each answer how you feel comfortable. Yep.
In my savings, I have 0. In my checkings, I have about -200. Don't worry, that's gonna go up for November. We're gonna be but yeah, that's the broke entrepreneur student life.
So I do enjoy going on vacations. I didn't for a long time until I could afford it. Just started a couple of years back. Last year I've been to Thailand and Hawaii twice, Mexico, and I'm going back to Hawaii in December. So yeah, opposite. But that's just time with my wife. That's the most important commodity in my life is my family, and that's identifying that area. And when it comes to money, I read somewhere a while back that after $75,000 a year, your life does not change. So if you think that having more money is going to make your life happier or better, especially in this part of the world, if after you make 75, up until that point, there's some luxuries that you can be afforded. So after $75,000 a year, your life will not change. So my partner and we only pay ourselves $75,000 a year. After that, everything else stays and gets reinvested in the businesses. So yeah, so my personal account is doing pretty good, but not more than it has to be.
So if you can save that one, Paul, I just want to end, I'm going to give you each 1 minute. Any closing thoughts, anything you want to add, summarize. It's been a wonderful conversation. I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'll leave it to you.
Well, I was just going to say that it actually goes hand in hand. So again, I was going to say, you can sit here and you can obviously hear that there's sort of opposing views. And again, I will say that's totally okay. So I would preface that by saying, again, for me, it's strategic and it's all part of a plan. And so last year I developed a 5-year plan that I plan on basically retiring by 40 or 41. And so far we're on track to do that. But in order to make that happen, I designed a work-back plan. Work-back plan is when it sounds exactly like it sounds. So you work back from your goal and you create that thing, right? And so right now we're on track to that because I'm in acquisition discussions for my retail tech company. And then Volition is growing into its own beast that eventually I should just be a figurehead of sorts for it. So, it is what you make it. And so I have an agreement with my wife that she's like, I get that we're going to have to go through this now, and the vacation and all that will come later, and we can live our lives how we want to.
Great.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
So it is what you make it.
Thank you.
If you can take anything away from this, I'd want you to walk away with this knowing that if you are your own strongest supporter, those who truly support you will come out. And you'll be able to create a framework based on your support network that actually believes in you. And remember that you always have control and a choice in most of these situations. Even if you're dealt a really bad card in life, even if you've got 1 day left, you can still make the most. You can choose to tell the Reaper, no, I'm going to make the most out of that. And you always have a choice to be the best person for yourself, and you'll see the rest come into play. So, yeah, it's either 1 day or day one.
The one thing I hope you guys could take away from this, at a young age, the world is full of possibilities. But until you really commit to something long term, it's hard to get good at anything. One of the wonders of the world is compound interest, but I also believe in compounding your time and effort. So figure out what you are, figure out what you're good at, and just consistently work at it day in, day out, a little bit at a time. Try to make 1% improvements in whatever you want to get good at, and eventually you'll get great at it. So Yeah, it's that. It's a lot of what Sean said, but don't be afraid to be who you are and commit to something. Like, don't be afraid to commit. It's the biggest disadvantage you guys have is, as millennials, is technology. It's distracting you every second. Everywhere you go, you're always distracted. Whether you know or not, you achieve instant gratification. Everything you do. If you want to post a picture online, people will tell you that you're cool or it's good or it's not. But so understand that instant gratification is good, but there's two areas in life you'll never get instant gratification. That's your career and your relationships. Those take effort. So daily, consistent effort in those areas will get you somewhere.
Thank you. So each of these panelists, I believe, are sticking around for the day, definitely for the exhibitors session happening very shortly. So if you have any of the questions that we didn't get to, please ask them. But thank you, each of you, for joining us, spending time sharing your wisdom and your thoughts and the stories. If we can just give each of them a round of applause. And so we're immediately moving into lunch. My request is that everyone, when you do grab your lunch, come back and eat it here. And we want to definitely make sure, if you need to use a restroom break or whatnot else, please be back here by 12:10.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So make sure you are back. Come on out and help yourself. Come in here and eat. And we need to be back here by 12:15 so we get ready to rock for our afternoon session.
That was good stuff. Thank you. And I'm really interested.